I'd like to welcome everybody this afternoon. This is a GCMA Know-How webinar, and today we're joined by Hannah Cook from GTI Consultancy. You're very welcome, Hannah. Thank you very much for joining us today. As usual, we just have one or two announcements for the members who are present. Just making you aware that there is another webinar tomorrow morning, which is under our GCMA Hot Topics banner, and that's done by Shield Safety Group, and it's really about how to reopen the golf clubs safely after lockdown. Some tips on what may have been forgotten, what may have been overlooked while we've been concentrating so much on COVID, plus the COVID situation as well. So that should be worth joining in. That's 9:30 in the morning. It's through registration. You can find the links through the e-newsletter. And just a reminder for everybody that we have the Principles of Golf Club Management course on the 8th to the 12th of March. Quite a convenient date. Kids are back at school, so should be able to concentrate fully on that. So for any of your heads of departments or aspiring club managers that you may know of from outside of the industry, please send them our way. So that's really about everything from me. Just to say again, Hannah, thank you very much for doing this presentation for us today. We're looking forward to it, and I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you. Right, I'll just share my screen, so bear with me. Right, give me 2 moments, everyone. Right, so okay.
It's always the moment of truth, isn't it? It's like taking your baking out of the oven.
Right. Can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Great. Okay. So yeah, thank you for that introduction, Gavin. So welcome everyone to this new member acquisition plan. What we've done is we've split it into 3 parts. So the first section, I'll give a brief introduction about myself. We'll look at key components of a marketing acquisition plan, and then we'll look at calculating budget and targets, and really looking at true customer value and correct return on investment. And then we'll do, in the second session, we're going to look at customer profiling, connecting with customers, creating commitment, and something called the AIDA model. And in the final session, we'll look at actually what channels are available to us, and we'll touch on database marketing, measuring success, and I'll wrap up with a summary at the end. What we thought would be good is after each session, we'll have a question and answer, short question and answer session, just so you don't have to wait the entire webinar if you've got any burning questions. So we'll break it down and answer the questions after each part. So to give a bit of an introduction to myself and my experience and why it is me presenting to you today. So I've got 18 years experience in the sales marketing sector, and more specifically, I've spent the last 9 years marketing in the sport and leisure sector, in particular focusing on growing memberships and participation. So for 3.5 years, I was the group marketing manager at Crown Golf when we were the largest group, and we had about 27,000 members, so lots of memberships we were juggling. And then I spent 3+ years as managing director of a big children's sport and activity group. And we used to have about 200 sports clubs running every day. So again, a big operation, had to drive a lot of bookings and online sales and really make sure people are engaged with those sports. So what I'm going to do today is share with you a lot of tools and techniques that hopefully will help you with shaping your activity, making decisions, and effective campaigns. So we'll start just by touching on what the current situation is in the marketplace. A lot of clubs have seen a growth in memberships. We know that it's done well in the last 12 months. A lot of clubs with even waiting lists, which is a fantastic position to be in. But what we also know is that there's probably going to change quite soon as people return back to work and aren't at home working as much. They're going to be commuting more. They're going to have less time, less flexibility, and there might be that pressure then put back on them about justifying that membership. So it's just, again, highlighting that importance to keep the pipeline of new members coming through in case we have a hit with retention rates. And also other sports are going to come to back into action and might be competing for your, you know, new members' time. So just really important for us not to rest, you know, on our laurels, and to make sure you're still got plenty of activity and driving the numbers on the waiting list and new, you know, new members coming through the doors, because it will get more competitive again. So that's the kind of background into the importance of why we're talking about this today. I think acquisition should cover three main areas. First one being around brand awareness, and really that's the visibility of your brand, so or your club. So some clubs I know can be really hidden away down country rural roads, and actually, you know, not many people, surprisingly, considering the size of a golf course, can be quite hidden, and people, especially if they're moving new into the area, don't know it, you know, exists. You could be in an area of quite a lot of golf clubs, in which point you're, you know, competing for attention. So that's why it's important to have a good blend of brand awareness activities, so that you're making sure you're visible in your community and people know that you exist, and what you do as well. You know, a lot of clubs offer wider than golf, so it's an all-round good thing to keep that on people's radar in the local community. And also, it's not just about visibility, it's about credibility and reputation. You know, you want to be positively perceived in the community, so sometimes it's just getting involved with other local partnerships and things to be seen and have that positive perception. And a key thing with brand awareness is repetition and familiarity. Research has shown that if there's two brands and we haven't had a positive or negative experience with either one, but we're more familiar with one of them, we will tend to sway towards what we find familiar, because it's just it's a social assumption that if it's familiar, then it must be more well established. It must be, you know, a more positive and kind of well-respected brand if we've heard of it and we recognize it. So we tend to sway towards something we find familiar. And then we move into our lead generation. And this is where we actually start taking the next level up from brand awareness, where we're starting to want to open up lines of communication. It tends to be around data capture, connecting deeper on a deeper level with interests, desires and needs. And really probably driving people to either pick up the phone or visit your website and have a look at what it is you offer at your club. And then once we've done that lead generation and we've generated all that new contacts, it's then saying, how are we utilizing that marketing and that database marketing? And you want to be segmenting properly. You want to have a good frequent communication and engagement plan and upsell plan. And then naturally those three should lead to new members, which you then have your retention plans. So how much should you be spending on marketing? It's a key question that actually some people struggle with. And what I've put together here is a slide of talking about, to give you some key points and ways to look at it. So the first one is that most businesses have a marketing budget of 2 to 10% of their total revenue. So that's for the whole year. So if you are less than this or over that, then I would suggest you kind of definitely review your spending in that area. But somewhere between 2 and 10% for the year is the right sort of scale that we should be looking at. So if we want to look at campaign budgeting, how much we should be spending on a specific campaign, the best way to look at it, or I've found, is to work backwards. So if we look at this right-hand side column, there I might say to myself, now I've used example numbers here, but what you can do is take this model and you play around with the conversion rates and the targets that you want to set. And so that you, for example, I've set it at £1,000 per member as the value of a membership. It might be 500, it might be 750, it could be 1,500. So but at least you've got a model here that you can put the numbers in and start to work backwards. So if we start at the top, if I wanted 50 new memberships and they're worth £1,000 each, we know that there's a revenue target of 50,000. And to get 50 new members, I need to first start with maybe a club tour. So if I look at how well I convert them, I might say, well, actually, I'm 50% effective at getting people from a tour to become a member. So then I want 100 tours booked. And then I work backwards from that and I say, okay, to get 100 tours, How many inquiries do I need? Okay, well, I'm really good at converting inquiries. So let's say I get 80% of people that I talk to, I can get onto a tour. Then I would look at having 125 inquiries. And then I go back another step and I say, okay, if I want 125 inquiries, how many website visits do I need? So that's where all websites will vary depending on the quality of your site, how well it's structured and built, and the writing and content. But most will be somewhere between sort of 2 and 5%. I've gone with a sort of optimistic 5% here. So if that's 5%, we need website visits of about 2,500 if we want to generate 125 inquiries. So then I say, well, how much does that equate into spending? 2,500, you might be looking at, say, around £2 per website visit. This can vary depending on all the different activities that you can do and the varying degrees of quality that you want to invest to, sort of events, to digital, to social. It will really vary, but £2 we might say as an average in terms of cost per click, if we could generate all this traffic from cost per click, so Google ads, things like that. And that then would work back to a £5,000 budget. So that gives us a really good starting point to say, okay, this campaign, I want to generate £50,000 worth of revenue. I need to spend around £5,000. I'm looking at a return on investment of for every £1 spent, £10 return. But that's really well, so that gives us a really good structure, but actually this is good for buying a pair of shoes. But if we're looking at membership, it's actually a lot higher, that value. And so that's why we bring in something called lifetime value. So the next slide looked at calculating lifetime value. So this is where we say, okay, if we look at the next 5 years, we start back on the right-hand side at the top, and I've got 1,000 members, 50 members, they're 1,000 each. That's 50,000 revenue in the first year. But if 70% then are retained the next year, that's another 35,000. And if they're then retained again for the next year, that's another 25, and so forth, another 18 and 13. And suddenly that campaign value has gone from 50 to 141,000. And that's not even taking into consideration rises in membership fees, additional spending they're going to do in the bars, maybe events, birthdays, and also the referrals they're going to give you of other members. So suddenly our campaign spend of 5,000 looks even more appealing, because actually our return on investment is more like 1 to 28, because you're getting that 141,000 over the next 5 years. So when you're looking at it, it just helps to kind of make it a little bit more digestible in kind of justifying that spend and how much you want to invest into getting members, because sometimes it can be a really short term view to just look at your immediate members and that 1 year revenue. Okay. So that gives us a summary starting point. So we would start the campaign by saying, okay, we know what we want to achieve. We want 50 new members. We want a revenue in the first year of 50,000, and we're looking at a 5-year value of 141,000. We're going to look to spend somewhere around the region of 5,000. Our return on investment is going to be 1 to 28. We know that we want around 100 tours, 125 inquiries, and 2,500 website visits. So that gives us a really good snapshot to then kick off into, right, what's our messaging, who are we targeting, and what activities. So that brings us to the end of that sort of first bite-sized section, getting set up for a campaign. Do we want to, is there any questions at this point that, I don't know if any came in on the chat?
I don't see any at the moment, Hannah. So I guess you just carry on.
No, yeah, if no one's jumping in, then I will carry on. So our next session, we're going to start by looking at customer profiling. So I used to find that actually there's probably 3 ways that we can, I mean, there's lots of different criteria that we can segment up golfers, but there's probably 3 key sort of sections. So golfer type, I'm not going to go into all these, the different categories. You know them all better than I do. You're dealing with it day in, day out. But we've got our sort of 5-7 day member. Is it, they're off peak, on peak, junior, couple, veteran group. Or are we looking more at experience? So you might be wanting to target the newer golfer. Are they a beginner? Are you wanting to get a fresh, a fresh batch of golfers into the club? Then you might go with a messaging that suits more of the beginner, new golfer. So golf can be quite intimidating if it's a challenging course. So you might use language like challenging course for the more experienced competitive golfer. Whereas actually, if you're wanting to attract a more inexperienced golfer, you might want to tone down, and talk about that sort of more well-rounded course rather than a really sort of harsh, challenging course. And also, but you might be just going after that real mid-range golfer that's, casual, haven't yet made that jump to membership, but are playing enough that they're on that sort of tipping point, just got to tip them over and convince them of the extra benefits they're going to get from being a member rather than a casual player. And then the third section is about lifestyle and affluence. So here, every club, and from my experience, the clubs are so different. They all have their own culture and, their own sort of feel and atmosphere. And it is important that you connect with the customers that are going to connect with your atmosphere. So if you're looking for golfers that are going to go high end, they want that fine dining experience, they want the best wines, then you're going to use the language that's going to resonate with that sort of audience. But if actually you're looking for a more social, maybe you're looking for the kind of people that want to go for afternoon golf drinks, or a little bit more relaxed social coffee mornings, then it's going to affect the language and the imagery that you're going to use in your advertising and your marketing, because that's going to give quite a powerful message about the culture at your club and the feel and the atmosphere that you're going to portray. So what I then put together is, first we're going to touch on Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So a lot of you might have come across this. It's a very common model, but it's really important, and it's good to connect with this when we're talking about the language that we want to use in our campaigns and the angles and the hooks that are really going to convert people from your casual golfer into your membership golfer. So Maslow talks about our different levels of needs, the basic ones being around safety, food, sleep, those sort of basic needs. And then we move into our higher, more deeper needs, which is about belongingness, friendship, status, feeling of accomplishment, fulfillment, creative outlet. And this is where golf is so powerful, because it's one of those sports that combines all of that so well. Even the fact that with the clubs having the badge, you really feel that sort of tribalism, that belonging, that you part of a club, you're part of something, and that's an innate human need that we enjoy and we need, and we should be tapping into when we're selling the memberships. And also, you're creating those opportunities, those social opportunities, as well as the sporting side that is, it's a measurable sport. It's a great sport in being able to track towards a goal, because we've got scorecards and handicaps. You can see yourself progressing, and we talk about here about fulfilling your true potential. It's a great sport for that, because it allows for plenty. I think that's why lots of people get that enjoyment from it, so that you can progress and it's measurable. So what I have done is put another slide together for you, where there's really two elements when we're selling into a member. There's the reasons why they're into golf, and those are those really deep messages that you can sort of connect with. And then there's the why your golf club that they should choose. So why golf? We talked about the bonding and the social side. That really, that's such a core underpinning foundation of golf. It is that social bonding side. It's a great sport for that, because it's as you're going around the course, it's a little, it's slower, so it allows for the sort of talking time. So great bonding tool. The membership, we talked about that belongingness, club clothing, that sort of uniform feeling that actually we're a part of something. Outside exercise, so there is all the health benefits. It makes you feel good, fresh air, being healthy. It's competitive. It's a competitive sport that gives you the opportunity to win and to progress. And that, because it's got such different categories of competition, it allows you to compete within your, region without you feeling like you're, out of your depth. And so also measurable. It's a great sport for being able to have a scoring system and see your progress. A sport like football, whereas you'll get one score as a whole team, it doesn't give a really measurable tracking progress for your skills. Whereas the good thing about golf is that you obviously have the ability to see how each part of your game is improving and tracking. And it's a low impact sport. So we know that a lot of people switch to golf when they, want lower risk of injury, and a lower intensity sport so that they can enjoy it without maybe risking getting an injury. So then we start to look at the messages around why your golf club. You'll all be really familiar with these, using them a lot. The course, the clubhouse, the social calendar, the facilities, the golf pro, price, location, all classic things that people can tend to lead with. But I think what's really important is those things on the right only matter when they're put in the context of the things on the left. So the reason that the social calendar is so important in the member events is because you are creating opportunities to create that belongingness. So it's not the element of just putting on event. Those events have really got to have a purpose of bringing together the members and creating a really close-knit community feel in the club. So the reason I put this down is because, as you can see, there is a lot of information there. And when we are marketing and communicating, not all channels are going to give you the opportunity to say all of that at once. So it's really important that depending on the group that you're communicating with, you're pulling out maybe 1, 2, 3 of those points and at least have one lead message that is what you want people to take away with each communication. And you want to drip feed them in along the customer journey so that you do end up covering all of this. But what you don't want to be doing is sticking all of it, and I see it quite a lot, all of this onto one flyer. You cram as much information all in one go onto the flyer, and it becomes a little bit overwhelming. And it, almost the messages are lost because there's too much information. So sometimes less is more by, thinking, right, who are we really connecting with? Is it the competitive golfer? Okay, let's really focus on the golf. Is it the social golfer? Okay, really connecting more about the events and the community side of it. And it also doesn't have to just be one, especially when we get onto the database marketing. It's really important to, to have a balance of these messages. So one time you might be leading with the social side, the next time you might be leading with the events and the course, one might be with the, the pro offering. So it's really important to get a good, well-rounded communication balance. So there's a tool called Ada, which is a really good sort of almost checkpoint auditing tool when you put anything together as a communication. And Ada stands for attention, interest, desire, and action. So the things, it makes sense. It's kind of that logical engagement. So the first thing is that you need to just get their attention. And that's where you're going to use your powerful, catchy headlines, colorful adverts. It's kind of going, hey, stand out on the page. We're all getting loads of emails every day. We see a noise of advertising all the time. So it's that thing that you're going to do that's going to stand out and suddenly grab someone's attention. So now I've got your attention. How am I going to get you interested in what I've got to say? And that's where you're going to use those buzzwords and the language that's going to connect with people. It might be a key bit of information that is going to get their interest, a fact or a statistic. You might use free gifts, trials, promotions, could be a discount, or maybe a special event that you've got running. So it's something that's just going to be interesting enough now that you've got my attention. I want to know a bit more. And then we move into our desire stage. And this is where we talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. How are you really connecting with the emotions of that person, the values and the belief system? This is where you really want to start selling the dream. And I think a really cool technique is to try and use language and terminology that helps someone visualize them being a member and helps them picture, gosh, yeah, you start to get their imagination going and they can picture themselves being a member at that club and how great it's going to be and how they're going to enjoy it and all the great feelings they're going to get. So using the right language, you can start to evoke those sorts of feelings. And action, one of the most basic things is about being accessible, having the phone number, having email address, as many different ways as you can so that they can get in contact. And then also creating urgency and, you can talk about waiting lists, limited spaces, that sort of also gives that underlying impression that it's obviously pretty good because there's a waiting list, and it's a concept called social proof that if somebody else likes it, it automatically makes us think that it must be good. And then the last thing is about bite-sized commitment, which I'm going to spend a few minutes on talking on the next slide. So commitment, a little bit of a witty slide there for you. But actually, sometimes if we think about selling as a little bit like dating, it's easier to ease someone into a decision-making process and a commitment. So rather going full in and making our whole campaign, a marketing campaign about be a member, be a member, be a member, which actually that can be quite a jump for someone. And if they're not thinking about membership, then actually that you've already cut off their attention because they've already decided, no, I don't want to be a member. But if you break this down into the steps, we talked about the tour, we talked about just a phone call, maybe just, popping in and having a look around. You starting to break that commitment down a little bit, and suddenly it's not such a big decision that they've got to make up front. And so that's why you might want to focus your initial messaging and advertising on actually just coming, visiting, having a free round of golf, having a chat with yourselves or membership manager. So it's about us just breaking it down and making it feel less intimidating, because sometimes when we go full in with membership and it's 12 months and can sort of put people off because it's too much commitment. But actually, if you just start it early and break it down, you've got a much better conversion rate. And that brings us to the end of our second section. Does anyone have any questions at this point?
Yeah, I should have said, Hannah, we've got the shy group in today, so no questions at the moment.
It's fine. It works well. I can carry on. So it works well. So final section. I hope I'm not talking too quickly. So but I will go on to the final. So brand awareness. I've put this up because it just makes me smile, because it's a little bit of a smart decision here. If you were just going to think completely logical, a typical marketer might say, right, we've got money for 2 posters and we're going to stick one at one end of the road and one at the other end of the road. That way we're going to capture both bits of footfall. Makes perfect sense. Would be a lot of marketers would make that decision. It's going to cover more reach. But what they've decided here is they've done something a little bit smarter, where they've said, yeah, okay, we're putting them in the same place. They're going to cost the same amount of money, but it suddenly takes it from just being another poster on the wall to it's going to make you stop and you take a minute to go, hang on, why am I seeing 2 posters? And it makes you have a little laugh to yourself. You see what they've done. And then we've got multiple things happening where actually we've now got a positive association with this brand logo because it's made you laugh. It's certainly made an impact. It's a little bit more memorable because it's made you laugh and it's different. So sometimes being brand awareness, this isn't a lead generation tool whatsoever, but it's just a really clever way of getting positive association and attention. And yeah, so I thought it was a really good example to open up with. But if we look at brand awareness and lead generation as a whole, I tend to fit them into 3 categories. Now, many of these are interchangeable. Local can be social or physical or digital. Social, we're talking about the platforms, very much digital. But I think if you look at them like these 3, it just makes sure that you're getting a really well-rounded blend of activities across your acquisition plan. Now, what I've done is stick up a few examples across all those categories. I know that recently there was a webinar on social, so I'm not going to go into huge amounts of depth into the social platforms, but obviously they're there. I think as an overarching technique, it's better to be on 1 or 2 and do them well and regularly, rather than to spread yourself thin across lots and lots of platforms and post one every few months. You're not really going to get an engaged audience on that sort of regularity. So it's more important to stay committed to maybe a couple of platforms that you've got enough resource to manage. So local, really important for a golf club where, you know, you're a key part of the community. You've got an opportunity. Some have been around, you know, a long, long time. And it's a great opportunity to stay connected with the local events, local businesses. So fetes, you know, a great way to show that, you know, you're not a closed door club. Sometimes golf clubs can be perceived as being a bit sort of intimidating, big grand gates, you know, that maybe people, if they haven't been to your club before, don't know what they're going to be greeted with. Is there's that old classic movie scene where somebody walks into a bar and people might feel they're going to walk into a clubhouse, everyone's going to go silent. Who is this person that's just entered our club? So it's really, if you want to get people to feel, you know, not intimidating, it's you know, intimidated by your club, then it's really important to do visibility, you know, show yourself as visible in the community, and that you are welcoming. You know, they should be able to turn up and ask for a tour, or come down, and it's not a closed club. The other thing with local is there's local radio. TV used to be really exclusive to sort of big brands, but now there's so many local regional advertising going on that actually it's becoming a little bit more accessible for local and regional businesses. There's things like advertising near train stations. So if you wanted to connect with people as they start commuting back to work, and they'd much rather be on a golf course, then that might be a place that you want to have a poster to remind them of that and connect with that while they're stood there thinking, oh, I really fancy being on the golf course this weekend. And so that's a good opportunity to connect with people then. And local press is another one. So you might have interesting articles, doesn't have to be paid advertising. And, you know, you can get into the local press with interesting or quirky stories. We used to have sometimes if a member or a staff had done something to raise money for the community, that quite often got covered in the local press. So just try and create opportunities that you can again get picked up in the local community. Social we've talked about, and then digital, there's an emerging amount of digital platforms and communities. So there's SEO, search engine optimizing. So it's just making sure that on Google, if people are searching, you know, golf clubs in Berkshire, that you're coming up on the list. There's paid advertising so that you can pay to be coming up on other, you know, names or, you know, keywords that are more specific to your area and your club. You know, you might have people looking for golf membership in Newbury, in which case you would pick that term and you can have an advert specifically to that appear. And then also there's the golfing publications. We've got something like 20 golf publications, I think, and they've had to adjust and move online and become digital. And as their advertising platforms become more sophisticated, they're now giving, you know, got much better opportunity to segment and target visitors that are localized to certain regions. So that's sort of opening up again even more channels and opportunities. So as you'll see, you know, there's a huge array of choices that we've got there. So it's important that when we're faced with all this choice, that we make the right decisions of what to go with. So my next slide, I've put together some of the key factors that you should be looking at in terms of making decisions. So the first one is price, or actually all of the costs. So if you're doing a door drop, you would want to make sure you factored in the design, the print, the delivery, any photography, all the costs that are going to be associated with it. Reach, how many people are you going to reach with your channel of advertising or marketing? Conversion rate, so do some calculations on what you would expect to get back. Obviously, some, you know, it varies wildly from different activities. Lead time, so if you're looking at door drop, that's could take a month to get organized, whereas digital adverts could be switched on in a matter of hours. So depending on the speed at which you want to hit the marketplace, that will influence your decision. Wastage, with all advertising, we tend to have a percentage of wastage. That's really important to weigh it up with the cost. So you might want to have really low wastage. And so it's a really targeted list. So for example, if I send a flyer to everyone in Berkshire, only a certain percentage is going to be golfers, the rest is what we class as wastage. But that doesn't mean, so don't be totally put off by something that has wastage. You just have to factor it into the cost. It doesn't mean, you know, every channel has an element of wastage. Positioning. So if you're putting an advert in a paper, what's the position? Is it down the bottom in the corner? Is it hidden by lots of other adverts? Is it at the back of the paper? And those are all going to make differences on the response rates. Creative freedom. Some things are going to allow you a lot of flexibility. Some things are going to be pretty limited, just to a few handful of words sometimes. Dwell time, that's when, for example, the train station, you're going to have really high dwell time because they're going to be stood waiting for a train. You might get a few minutes, they're going to be staring at that poster. Whereas again, digital, you're probably looking at a few seconds before it's flicking onto something else. So that's what we call dwell time. Space. So sometimes people put adverts in publications where they're really tiny. I would question how much effectiveness, you know, that's going to generate you, because sometimes if you want the impact, you're almost better off spending the money and going for a half page or a full page, because if you've got pages and pages of tiny little adverts, the likelihood of you're standing out getting a response is going to be much, much lower. And then side benefits. So sometimes when you're buying and purchasing some of this, you might be able to get a few of extra channels thrown in, a bit of free social exposure with some digital partnerships with the publications. So that's just something to factor in. So now I'm going to move on to database marketing. So the main things we'll cover off is looking at segmenting, the methods, messaging, and then maintenance. So I'll work through each of these sections. Segmenting. So when we talked about profiling, we touched quite a bit on the types of golfers that you might be wanting to communicate with. But if this connects with your playing, you know, your T-sheet management systems, or your CRM systems, it's really great if you can segment customers based on the last time they visited your club, how often are they visiting, gender might sway your messaging, age profiles, playing profiles. So we talked about that competitiveness. And then methods. Once we know we've done our segmenting and we know who we want to communicate with, the method, the campaign is probably going to be a combination of these channels. So you've probably got a phone number or an email address, and that's going to allow you to put together a phase combination. So what could be really powerful is putting these in a really good succession. So you might start by sending something out in the post, and then an email that asks if they received it, and then with a phone call, did you receive it? That way you've got a conversation opener. Oh, I didn't receive it. Okay, I'll send it out to you. But then you can carry on talking, or you can follow up another email. So putting those all together can be quite a powerful impact that you can finally get through to what's the best channel to reach someone. Some people prefer phone calls, some people prefer email. And the other thing with text, each of these is appropriate to what you're doing. Text tends to be good for kind of promotional things, maybe a free trial. So really short, sharp sort of hooks that you would go out with the text, sale ending, something like that. And the scheduling of this, again, you know, do you want to be calling people on a Friday evening? No, people aren't going to be very receptive to that. Monday morning? No, because they're going to be running around, working, trying to sort things out. So try to think about the timing of each of those activities. We do know that from sort of late morning into early afternoon can be quite a good window as people start to that's that prime window. They've got the initial rush out in the morning. If they're working, they might be having a quick check of emails, quick check of phone. So that's quite a good window to send. And Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday also tends to be better days for sending emails, more effective impact. And then we look at our messaging. So a few different things to consider. You might want to go with a really glossy, impressive newsletter marketing approach, or you might want to try the more personal, a one-to-one. So the email looks like it's just come from you, a few lines to say, we'd love to, we've got a great new menu or restaurant, or we've redesigned one of the holes in the course, so we want you to come and try it. So there's different ways that you can go with that messaging, and different things will have different impacts with different people. And then we talked about that balance of facilities and what lead message you go with. Do you want to connect with the desires of people, or do you want to talk more about your facilities? Try and keep subject lines nice and powerful and punchy and short, and messages as well. Try not to write huge long emails. They won't get read. So just try and keep it really nice and short and sharp and condensed, and have a nice balance of imagery and text. So again, if you're doing a newsletter and you are going down the marketing approach, try not to have, just loads of words or just loads of imagery. That's the other problem, is if you front load lots of imagery into your emails and they land in someone's inbox, quite often if there's, the security barriers, then they're going to get greeted with lots of blank boxes rather than the imagery, and it can get deleted quite quickly. And the last thing, just with maintenance, if you're paying per email that's going out and being sent, make sure you're using valid email addresses and you're cleaning your database. Unsubscribe. We all know that GDPR is a really hot topic, and one of the sort of holes that things can slip into is if you are using a CRM system and an email platform, and you're getting unsubscribed to your email platform, but then you're pulling a fresh list from your CRM, suddenly you can lose some of your unsubscribed. So it's really important to make sure you've got a process. You don't want to be falling out with people and getting a bad reputation. So just make sure you've got a good system, a process to remove unsubscribes from all your systems. Non-openers, sometimes it's good to, you can clear out if people haven't opened your emails in the last 12 months. Sometimes people like to remove them out of the data list to just save again people that you're sending to that potentially just aren't interested. One caveat I would say with this is that all analytical tools, sometimes there's a margin of error, and I would question whether they accurately record non-openers when people read them in the reading pane but don't necessarily click the email. I think sometimes they could be registered as a non-opener when they did actually read it. So all I would say is take that approach with caution. Some people can be a bit gung-ho with rubbishing data when actually there might be a bit more underlying activity to it. So campaign measurement, just making sure, really important. This happens so often, and this might sound like basic things that I'm teaching, but actually just good reminders to make sure you get in the habit of recording how much you spent, recording when activity started, when did it finish, what was the impact on your website traffic, how many inquiries and web forms did you generate, how many tours were booked, what was the conversion rates of your tours to your inquiries, what's your database growth looking like, your email lists. Common one, how did you hear about us? But what I also like is to add the layer of the reason for joining. So it's two different things. The lead source tends to be a bit more about, did you see a flyer? Did you respond to an advert? Like, how did you hear about us? The reason for joining is more about that desire, that connection. That gives you a deeper insight into knowing why that golfer. Was it the fact that their friend is already a member, or was it the fact it's the course and the challenge, or is it about the social activity? So reason for joining is a nice little added element and level to understand your customer profile. So to wrap up, and just to remind you of what we've covered. When you're working out, you're calculating your budget and lifetime value, and work backwards so that and you can get a good point of where to start. Your acquisition plan should have you should cover three bases: awareness, data capture, and database marketing. Try to combine a balance of local, social, and digital activity. And when you're choosing, try to compare all your options instead of jumping in with the first one, or just sort of picking them individually instead of collectively as a plan. And we've given you those criteria to compare and contrast. Fifth, sell the dream. So make sure that, you know, instead of just listing what you've got, actually try and get the imagination going. Try to use emotive language that's going to get them to connect with, you know, the enjoyment they're going to get from being a member. Bite-sized commitment. Try not to go straight in with the big commitment and jumping straight into membership. Try to date them a little bit, and you know, maybe come down and talk more about the tour and the trying the course rather than just purely membership all the time. And measure your results. So thank you again. I hope you've enjoyed the session. Those are my contact details. I offer training in this area, and I support businesses if they do want hands-on kind of support with running campaigns. So it's something you want more information on, then there's my contact details. So if we've got any questions, this is a good opportunity.
We do, Hannah.
Okay.
Yes. So I guess first of all, from Simon, really what we're trying to find out is, you know, this is obviously it's a lot of information, and it's quite theoretical. Do you have any examples from a campaign that you've run recently for any golf clubs? You don't have to name the golf club, but something where you've run a campaign and what was successful in that.
So one really fascinating campaign that we did run was, and this was a bit of a different angle with it. So this is a classic example of where we didn't lead with the promotion. So usually when we would run our big spring campaigns, we would do the typical kind of, you'd get a month free, or we'd have different incentives and promotions. But at the time we were talking to a charity about getting golfers to donate old golf bags and clubs. And it was two sort of side conversations that were happening. And then we decided to say, well, actually, we're doing a really good project here for the charity, but it's a great opportunity to get press coverage and get interest in the clubs without us going with a really full-on salesy message. So we decided to actually to direct the money on the membership campaign towards, so the campaign was called Bag Amnesty. I don't know if people remember this. It was about, I think it was Tom will remember this. This, I think, was 2007, but it was a massive success in terms of we then led with we decided to invest into having a really fun creative. It was a bag that was in a golf shed, looking very sorry for itself. Had spider webs on it because it was, you know, the golfer had neglected it and hadn't been taken out to play enough golf. So we
my golf bag, I think, Hannah.
Yeah, probably. And Tom, you probably remember this as well. So we then created this campaign, and we got people interested in coming and bringing their golf bags into that, and then we gave them a voucher to buy other equipment. But what happened, what was a really nice side effect from that, is we had about 20 pieces of news coverage we did this around the sort of February, March, April time leading into our spring campaign. And we even made it onto Sky News. On my website, I've actually done a full cover of this case study because of all the detail and all the links to all the coverage we got with it. And suddenly we had, we had all this interest, press coverage that we never would have got on a membership offering, because, you know, every club around that season is offering different incentives and competing. But this allowed us to get attention and get our name out there, and it drove up website traffic really, really well. It drove people into the clubs, so they were coming in, you know, trading in old bags that they weren't using, but actually then purchasing new ones, and also they're getting in conversations, seeing the club, suddenly reigniting that, you know, they're getting the memories back of the enjoyment they've had. And it worked really well in terms of connecting with people, getting people into the clubs, getting them talking about golf again, raising our brand profile. And actually we had a really good success rate with memberships that year across lots of clubs, and had a really, really good result.
Yeah, good, really good example. I've got another question from Richard. The traditional members club staffing structure might be made up of a GM, an admin assistant, or limited office staff. Would you advise clubs to look at creating a membership sales stroke retention role? And do you think they would get a return on investment from that role?
So I would say this really varies a little bit by your club size. So we did tend to have membership managers in different clubs where we could justify it. GMs did take, an active role in the membership generation, but actually, as you've seen there, it is a select skill set in terms of marketing and really spending your money and getting good value for money. And that's actually, and this isn't me just selling, but this is where clubs tend to use someone like myself, where you want to outsource a part. You don't need someone full time, but you might need someone that's got the expertise to do it. So there are companies like myself and freelancers who will just part-time run campaigns for you. And it might be that you don't need them the rest of the year, but you only want someone to run a campaign from February to, through the spring and summer. And then you're not interested in having them, because obviously that's the downside. If you hire a membership person, they are going to be there through winter, summer, all year round. So the benefit about outsourcing, even outsourcing that you might want just to have someone temporary come in and do sales, the risk with that is that, are they really going to get your club, and are they going to be working on that sort of, be able to sell it to the level of the culture? Because that's the great thing I always found with the membership, the general manager and the membership manager when they were there permanently, is that they really got the culture of the club. They knew the members when they're walking around the clubhouse, they can introduce people. So sales is less outsourced, but marketing and digital campaigns certainly something. If you didn't want to go full time, then you could look at outsourcing an element of that's done for you.
Good. Next one. Hi, Hannah. What are your thoughts about exit surveys? We've had some really good feedback and even managed to stay in touch, resulting in a member returning, but also annoyed and already leaving member. Your thoughts on exit surveys?
I think it's a good thing. I do. I think you have to take probably a bit of a pinch of salt, because sometimes we aren't always honest about if it's a financial reason. They might not always be honest about that it's a financial reason that they're leaving. But anywhere where you're getting feedback, I think it's a positive thing. So I think it also shows that you care enough that you want to know why they are leaving. So it leaves a really positive end note to that exit. So I think it's a good thing. I would just say, when you take what they say, you then have to be able to process and interpret it the right way, and make the right decisions, I guess, and act on it.
And final question for the moment from Stephen. Do you feel that you always have to offer a deal? We're working towards creating the best club where everyone wants to be a member. So I guess should you always have some promotion going at any given time?
So I think this is a really interesting one. I think if ever there was a best time to not have to do that, is probably now, when you're at that waiting list level and you want to talk about value. I think it's a really great position to be able to talk, and that's where you start differentiating yourself. We're talking about the language and really focus. Price won't come too much more into it if you really manage to sell what they're going to, that experience, and they're going to fulfill the needs that they, those human desires that we talked about that belongingness. If something is really powerful for them, and you get the right messaging and the right value, and it fits with them, then you absolutely do not have to run a promotion. One thing I do want to highlight is, when you think about your club members, you will always have them on a scale of affordability. So you will have and different messages will resonate with different people. So you've got your price of your membership. You will have some people who can afford that very comfortably. They're not necessarily choosing you because you're the best price. You might because they love the social atmosphere there, because it's the closest thing to, it's really close to their house, or they just love the course. So they can afford it really well. You're going to have people who will be on the aspirational level of that. So it doesn't matter which club you are, there will always tend to be this scale. And you'll have the people that will push to want to be a member. And even if it means stretching their disposable income, they will make that jump. Now, you're not going to necessarily know who is who, but it's just really important to be aware of that. The reason I give you an example, when I was selling children's activity clubs, and we had private school, we ran a lot of them at private schools, and I always had this scale. We had the children with the families that could afford, it was fine, it was convenient for them, they would pay the high prices and send the children there in the holidays. And then we had families where they just really wanted their children to experience those private schools. They couldn't afford to be there term time, but they knew that actually in the holidays they could go and enjoy the great sporting facilities. And so they would push themselves to be able to afford to go to that club. So say people would say, right, same customers, same product, but actually there's a different decision making and thinking that's going behind that. And just be aware of it with your club, because if you don't want to go on the lower end of that scale and you're pushing the higher end, then yeah, don't go for a promotion. But actually, if you want to tip a little bit more into volume, you could have a window, a sort of bubble of people where a promotional offer is just going to tip it into their affordability, and they're going to go for it, and then they're going to be committed to it. So just something to bear in mind when you're selling and using promotional offers.
Yeah, I guess that's to do with the segmentation of your database, isn't it? It's another one to put in there, the price sensitivity.
Yeah, exactly.
Good. Well, that's all the questions, Hannah. I thought that was really good. A good reminder for those of the members who've got some experience with marketing, but also with lots of new tips to think about going forward. As we know, it may not be the most relevant subject at the moment, but it very well may be in the near future. So it's good to keep that on the radar. So thank you very much. I just would say that Hannah is available for training, whether that be one-to-one or workshops in a group situation, and she can go on site as well. So just bear Hannah in mind whenever you think about marketing campaigns. And I'll stop sharing the screen there for you, Hannah.
Oh yes.
And and we'll say goodbye to you on that. And thank you very much for today's presentation.
No, thank you all very much. I hope you enjoyed, and thanks for the questions, and good luck with everything.